In tonight's headlines, His Highness the Emir patronises the opening of the 8th Conference of Kuwait's Heads of Missions. The National Assembly holds its regular session approving a number of key projects. The Gulf Cooperation Council rejects immediate ceasefire in Yemen unless the Houthis withdraw from seized territories. And former Egyptian President Mohamed Morsi is sentenced to 20 years in prison on charges of killing protesters in 2012. Under the patronage of His Highness the Emir Sheikh Sabah Al Ahmed Al Jaber Al Sabah and with the attendance of His Highness the Deputy Emir and Crown Prince Sheikh Nawaf Al Ahmed Al Jaber Al Sabah, the opening ceremony of the 8th Conference of the Heads of Kuwaiti Diplomatic Missions took place at Bayan Palace at noon today. His Highness the Deputy Emir and Crown Prince opened the conference with a speech and conveyed to the participants the best wishes and compliments of His Highness the Emir. His Highness said the region as well as the whole world entered very complicated political and security conditions which disrupted our security and deflected our attention from our main issues. Some people gave those serious conditions different definitions and some described them as the Arab Spring. But in fact they paved the way for instability. His Highness the Deputy Emir and Crown Prince went on to say, we have now to change our course to confront the forces targeting our security and stability and threatening our interest. We are facing those forces to prove to the whole world that we are able to consolidate our ranks and unify our positions so as to act in a collective and effective manner that will fulfill our goals and achieve our aspirations. Addressing the diplomats, His Highness the Deputy Emir and Crown Prince said no doubt that you are aware of the various dimensions of this phase which requires serious continuous work to deal with it. Our country, which is a part of this world with all its events and changes, was subjected to instigation and feud, but thanks to the strength of its internal front and the deep awareness of its people, it was able to overcome those attempts and reassert the strength of its people. His Highness went on to say that the ongoing events in Yemen are jeopardizing the security and stability of our countries and carry signals of inflicting serious consequences to our region. The GCC member states made unabated efforts to prevent the situation from drifting to this level and crowned those efforts with the Gulf Initiative and its executive and mechanism for execution. This initiative was accepted by all segments of the Yemeni people and adopted by the UN Security Council. However, the implementation of the initiative faced tremendous difficulties due to the hard line taken by the Houthis, who seized legitimacy and imposed the de facto policy using military force and destroying the security and stability of Yemen and threatening the GCC countries' peace by massing military forces and war drills. They also carried aggressions against the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and ignored all efforts so that this regretful situation persisted with clear threat to the security of our countries. Therefore, Kuwait, in implementation of the GCC Joint Gulf Defence Agreement and the Arab Defence Pact and in compliance of Article 51 of the UN Charter, joined its sister states in the Gulf Cooperation Council and the remaining countries in the Arab Coalition to confront this aggression and to try to restore legitimacy to Yemen. His Highness the Deputy Emir and Crown Prince said this position on part of Kuwait was dictated by its commitment to international conventions and the principles in which it strongly believes, and which is based on its respect to international legitimacy and rejection of interference in domestic affairs of other countries, as well as respect of people's choices far from hideous sectarianism. His Highness the Deputy Emir and Crown Prince said the UN Security Council Resolution number 22216 on April 14, 2015 came to prove that the GCC countries have taken the right decision and approach. His Excellency the Acting Prime Minister and Minister of Foreign Affairs Sheikh Sabah Al Khalid Al Hamad Al Sabah also delivered a speech at the opening of the session in which he said, on behalf of myself and employees of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, it gives me great pleasure to extend to His Highness the Emir Sheikh Sabah Al Ahmed Al Jaber Al Sabah and to Your Highness our best and deepest appreciation and gratitude for patronizing this conference and for Your Highness's attendance of the opening ceremony. He added that the patronage of His Highness the Emir and Your Highness's attendance of this conference is a source of pride for the Kuwaiti diplomats because it reflects the attention and care being given by the political leadership to the diplomatic corps Highness' belief in the importance of the role being played by them to serve the best interests of their country and to uphold its cases at the international platforms, guided by the wise directives and path established by His Highness the Emir and being followed by Kuwait's foreign policy, which enjoys the admiration and appreciation of the whole world. The acting Prime Minister and Minister of Foreign Affairs added that members of the Kuwaiti diplomatic missions are honoured to be the first defence line for Kuwait. They will spare no efforts to overcome all challenges through constant monitoring and meticulous analysis of the course of events and their impact on the security and peace of our people and our country. Sheikh Subah al-Khalid al-Hamad al-Subah said the fact which no one can ignore is the growing importance of the positions which Kuwait enjoys at the regional and international level. We have the right to be proud of this remarkable position which our country enjoys and its participation with the rest of the world community in providing support to peace and stability, as well as facing the different international challenges. The opening ceremony was attended by His Highness Sheikh Nasser al-Muhammad al-Ahmad al-Subah, the Deputy Premier and Minister of Interior Sheikh Muhammad al-Khalid al-Hamad al-Subah, the Deputy Premier and Minister of Defence Sheikh Khalid al-Jarrah al-Subah, the Acting Minister of Emir Diwan Affairs Sheikh Ali Jarrah al-Subah, the Advisor at the Emir Diwan Muhammad Dayfullah Shrar, and senior officials at the Emir Diwan and the Diwan of His Highness the Crown Prince. His Highness the Deputy Emir and Crown Prince Sheikh Nawaf al-Ahmad al-Jabir al-Subah received this morning at Bayan Palace His Highness Sheikh Nasser al-Muhammad al-Ahmad al-Subah. Kuwait's National Assembly held its regular session today, led by Parliament Speaker Marzouk Ali Al-Ghanem. Various issues were approved and mentioned to the Cabinet for final approval, among them launching of Jabir Bridge constructions, Jabir Al-Ahmad International Stadium, the agricultural sector and other suggestions of parliamentary committees to be further discussed. Here is more on the session in this report by Salim Al-Kindari.
Led by the Parliament Speaker Marzouk Ali Al-Ghanem, Kuwait's National Assembly held its regular session today with both legislation and the executive branches discussing and debating agenda issues. Minister of Electricity and Water Ahmed Al-Jasir said here today that the Public Works Ministry has secured all the official approvals required for launching the Jabir Bridge constructions, formerly called Sabbiya Bridge, including the oil sector's approval. The minister said during the ordinary session of the National Assembly in response to a question raised by an MP regarding claims that the Jabir Bridge has been constructed on an oil well in Kuwait Bay, that the Ministry of Public Works has secured all necessary approval from all sectors concerned, including the oil sector. According to Minister of Information and Minister of State for Youth Affairs Sheikh Salman Sabah Salim Al-Mahmoud Al-Sabah, Jabir Ahmed International Stadium will be fully ready by the end of 2015. The stadium will follow high technical standards and safety measures. Meanwhile, Sheikh Salman noted that the Cabinet had sent all those involved in the stadium's malfunctions to the public prosecution, which is currently probing the subject. The National Assembly has accepted a request from the public prosecution to lift the immunity of Member of Parliament Nabil Al-Fadl in a misdemeanor case. The Parliament also approved a request by members of the Parliament to establish public holding companies for the employment of house workers, while the other committees will evaluate and debate the approved suggestion. The agricultural sector had its share of discussion also, where both branches agreed on various amendments to the use of lands for both plantations and fisheries. The session will look into further more issues during Wednesday's session. From the National Assembly, this is Salim Kendiri reporting for the English News.
Envoys of the Gulf Cooperation Council told UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon that there would be no immediate ceasefire in Yemen unless the Houthi rebels withdraw from seized territory. The envoys agreed that certain conditions must be met for the Arab Coalition air campaign Decisive Storm to be suspended, and that these were spelled out in the recently adopted Security Council resolution. The resolution adopted last week demands that the Houthis pull back from seized territory, including the capital Sana'a, and their violent campaign and return to peace talks. Following the resignation of Moroccan diplomat Jamal bin Omar as Yemen peace envoy, Ban moved to appoint Mauritanian diplomat Ismail Ould Sheikh Ahmed to be his new representative. Former Egyptian President Mohamed Morsi was convicted on charges of violence and inciting violence and sentenced to 20 years in prison for the torture of protesters in December 2012. Morsi stood trial with 14 co-defendants who were also convicted of violence and inciting violence, but were all acquitted of murder. He is also standing trial in 3 other cases, including 2 on charges of espionage. Today's verdict sparked no immediate street protest, but Cairo residents had mixed reactions to the news. Heavy fighting continues in the Iraqi city of Ramadi between government forces backed by local tribal groups and fighters from the ISIL group. Iraqi troops claim to have liberated the Ramadi Children's Hospital taken 10 days ago by the militants and regained territory near the government buildings. The troops are engaged in intense clashes in an offensive to regain control of Sufia, one of 3 villages that fell into the hands of the group last week. Meanwhile, Iraq's Prime Minister Haider al-Abadi has authorized the deployment of a large number of fighters in the Anbar province, where residents have been fleeing the intensified fighting. At least 9 people were killed and dozens others were wounded today when a car bomb exploded outside a restaurant in the Somali capital Mogadishu. There were no immediate claims of responsibility, but suspicion fell on militant group Al-Shabaab, which has carried out numerous suicide attacks in the city. A day earlier, Al-Shabaab claimed responsibility for a suicide bombing that killed at least 7 people and wounded 8 others in northern Somalia. The bombing was Al-Shabaab's 3rd deadly attack against international personnel in the span of 3 days. The internationally recognized government in Libya said today that migrant smugglers were taking advantage of the unstable political situation in the country to traffic people through Libyan territory. Meanwhile, the Italian Coast Guard rescued 446 people aboard an overcrowded fishing boat trying to reach the Italian coast. The Coast Guard also reported that it saved about 638 migrants in 6 different rescue operations on Monday alone. It comes as Italian prosecutors began building their case against the traffickers responsible for the drowning of as many as 950 migrants in the Mediterranean. South Korea's Prime Minister Lee Wan-koo offered to resign amid a bribery scandal just 2 months after he took up his post. In the latest political crisis to hit President Park Geun-hye, the premier has been at the center of a corruption scandal that fled after businessman Sung Won-jong killed himself earlier this month, leaving a memo listing the names of 8 high-profile figures he claimed to have bribed. Most of the 8 men, including Lee, are considered as close associates of the president. Lee has denied the allegation, but he has seen growing calls for him to resign after South Korea's media reported alleged evidence that indicates his ties with Sung. A fierce storm lashing Australia's southeast destroyed homes, left dozens stranded in swirling floodwaters, and many have led to the deaths of at least 3 people. The storm, which has been pounding Sydney and other parts of New South Wales state since Monday, has dumped more than 30 centimetres of rain in some areas, with gust winds more than 100 kilometres an hour. The wild weather closed Sydney Harbour to commercial shipping, forcing a cruise ship with about 2,500 passengers to wait off the coast, battered by big swells. The Ministry of Information, Development and Training sector celebrated with Kuwait University the graduation of a new group of broadcasters. The course was based on the state policy and ministry aims of highlighting the importance of proper training on the right manners and continuous development. Nurhan Elfi was there and has this report.
The Ministry of Information, represented by the development sector in cooperation with Kuwait University, celebrated the graduation of a new batch of broadcasters for the news sector and the political programs, in order to read the anchor's vocabulary and to develop their ability of linguistic expression.
Today we have terminated and finished the program. We have provided them with adequate certificates that stating that they had finished their Arabic language course. The role of Kuwait University again is to support the Kuwaiti communities, either institutions or individuals here in Kuwait, to help them to develop their skills and implement their skills when they go back to their workplace.
The Ministry of Information is eager to raise the broadcaster's efficiency and deliver the valuable media message because of the media main role as well as its positive impact in expression of the fundamental identity of Kuwaiti media.
We are today ending the ceremony of the first program of the introducing for a news program. About this program, this is the first time we do it for the whole sector, for the all producer in news sector. So in this time we are just making the arrangement for this program with the cooperation with Kuwait University.
The course was very brief but extremely useful. Mr. Mohammed Abdelrazak was an extremely intelligent person that actually gave us very useful points through his lecture, and I hope that very soon we will have the chance again to have another meeting with Mr. Mohammed Abdelrazak for further education.
The training courses also identified many of the mistakes committed by some of the news broadcasters and editors to help them to start and develop from their teacher's ending point. The broadcasters' training courses ended today, producing their first step to take on their career. From Marriott Courtyard Hotel, I am Nurhan Al-Alfi reporting for the English News.
And moving to local financial news, in which the three main indices of the Kuwait Stock Exchange were all negative by the end of today's trading session, with the price index dropping by 45 points to reach 6,308 points. The KSX 15 index also lost 7 points to settle at the level of 1,046 points. The share of Kuwait Gypsum Manufacturing and Trading Company was the top gainer of the day, while that of the Future Communications Company suffered the biggest loss. And a five-legged lamb who was born at a Welsh farm to farmer Bethan Davies has become an internet sensation. The healthy animal named Jake isn't the first five-legged lamb to be born in the United Kingdom. A similar occurrence happened in England back in 2013 when a five-legged lamb named Quinto was born.
What a star. Jakey boy.
To see our reports again, please visit our YouTube channel at MOI Kuwait News. And to recap tonight's news, here are the headlines once again. His Highness the Emir patronises the opening of the 8th Conference of Kuwait's Heads of Missions Abroad. The National Assembly holds its regular session approving a number of key projects. The Gulf Cooperation Council rejects immediate ceasefire in Yemen unless the Houthis withdraw from seized territories. And former Egyptian President Mohamed Morsi is sentenced to 20 years in prison on charges of killing protesters in 2012. Thank you for joining us. Have a good evening.